Everybody, we are back. It's that time of the month again. Every first Tuesday of each month, I do these live Q&As for our followers just to basically give back and help you guys out with the investment banking recruiting process. And so here we are again for the month of February. All right. And so this month is interesting, right? Because, based on where we're at in the recruiting process, for those of you who are sophomores, the summer of 2024 application process has really started to heat up, right? We've seen about half of our bulge bracket and elite boutique banks open up their application for summer 2024 already, and probably over a dozen middle market banks as well that have opened their applications for summer 2024. And so that's a good 25-ish top tier investment banks that currently have their applications open for summer 2024. So it's a lot. And there's also probably at least a handful of buy side firms, like Blackstone and KKR and Inside Ventures and uh, places like that, which I would also consider to be really, really good opportunities that have opened their application as well for summer 2024. So, with that said, you know, for those of you who are currently sophomores, if you are planning on recruiting, now is the time to start really turn like now is the time to turn it up, right? Now is the time to make sure that you're ready for these interviews. Now is the time to start, networking as hard as possible. If you haven't already been doing that already for the last several months, to just try to get as many interviews as you possibly can, right? So that's what we're going to be primarily talking about today. If you guys have questions that you guys want me to answer, um, start dropping them down below in the comment section. We are right now live on Instagram. We're also live on our YouTube channel. We're also live on my LinkedIn profile. So if you're watching us from any of those places, you can just comment down below the video with whatever questions you have, and I'm gonna wait a little bit for the queue of questions to build up so that I can have enough questions to answer. And in fact, I think we actually had some questions that were submitted to us before earlier today already on Instagram. So I'll make sure I go through those as well. Thank you for those who submitted questions. But that's the context for what we're going to be talking about today. Now, if you're not a sophomore, you're not recruiting for summer 2024, maybe you're a freshman or senior or junior or whatever, maybe you're recruiting for full-time opportunities instead, that's okay too. We can definitely still help you, right? And so if you have questions for that, feel free to drop down below as well. But my sense is that right now, based on where we're at, based on the season that we're in, a lot of the people that are really, really focused on recruiting are going to be sophomores, right? So that's a lot of what we're going to be talking about today. So with that said, for those of you who are new to this and you guys don't know who I am, let me just kind of give you guys a quick intro as people continue to drop their questions down below. My name is Sam Shaw. I'm the founder of Wall Street Mastermind. Uh, we've been around for about 5 years, and during that time, we've worked with over 800 students to help them with their investment banking recruiting process. And so it's our program is very unique in that we take a very high touch approach, meaning you actually get to work with not just myself but multiple coaches in a one-on-one manner, where we'll help you through the entire recruiting process from start to finish. Okay, so from wherever you're at right now, whatever you feel like you need help with from a recruiting standpoint, we can pretty much help you with that, because we've most likely helped someone else who had the exact same issue that you're having currently, or who have needed help with the exact same things that you need help with today. But primarily, we break that down in four major areas. One is building up your resume. Two is teaching you how to network effectively so that you can get more referrals and get more interviews as a result. Three is helping you, pass the behavioral interviews. And then fourth is, teaching you all the technical concepts you need to know so you can pass the technical interviews as well, right? And so if you know how to do those four things, and not only do them, but do them well in a timely manner, meaning you have to check all of those boxes before the recruiting process timeline kicks off, or at a minimum before the interviews start, right? Like you have to get your resume and your networking skills to a good place before the application process starts, because you need that to actually apply and to actually get interviews. And then your interviewing skills, you need that to be up to par by the time you actually start getting these interviews, right? Which, again, if you're a sophomore, it could be right now, right? Like JP Morgan, they're doing their super days this month in February. Okay. So that's kind of what we'll help you with. And then obviously we've built a nice little community of both current as well as future investment bankers. Like I said, we've had 800 people that have gone to the program. So a lot of our alumni, they continue to help out the current students as well. And so it's a very nice atmosphere inside of our community where it's very collaborative and people are constantly helping each other out. So if that's something that you're looking to be a part of, then pay attention to the Q&A today. See if believe in the things that I'm talking about and the advice I'm giving you, and see if you feel like this is the type of coaching that you feel like would be valuable for you as you navigate through this very, very competitive process, right? And if it is, and you do want to work with us, then the first step will be for you to book a free virtual coffee chat with one of the successful alumni in our program who has already gone through the recruiting process and has secured an offer from one of the top tier investment banks out there, either a bulge bracket bank or a elite boutique bank. And, they'll hop on, talk to you for, a quick coffee chat just to answer whatever questions you have. Okay. That's not like sales call or anything like that. It's like, just answer whatever questions you have. You can ask them about the program. You can ask them about the recruiting process, just like any other upperclassman you talk to where you want to know whatever you want to know, feel free to ask them. And if after that conversation, you still want to work with us, then you can apply. You do have to apply because we can't work with everybody. Like I said, we've only worked with about 800 people in the last 5 years. So that's not a lot of people, right? You can do the math. That's not a lot of people, right? And so you do have to apply, but if you apply and you're a good fit and we do decide to invite you in, we are the only company out there to offer a money back guarantee. Meaning if you work with us and you don't get into investment banking, we will basically give you a full refund, right? And so that's pretty crazy, right? Like that's how confident we are. If we do accept you into the program, we have to feel so confident about our ability to get you the job that we're willing to make an offer like that, which no other company out there right now is willing to do that. Okay. So anyway, that's enough about me. I think we have a bunch of questions that have come in. So let me start answering them. I'm going to try to get through all these questions in the next 52-ish minutes or so. And so, forgive me. I'm going to say up front, if I talk really, really fast, is because I'm trying to get through all the questions. Okay. So let me first start with the people that submitted their questions ahead of time because, I'm just going to go in order. So Shriman B asked earlier today on Instagram, what do you think of lower middle market PE/small hedge fund internships before IB summer analyst recruiting? Yeah, Shriman, I think that's totally fine. I think that can be very relevant. You can definitely get some relevant skills from working at a lower middle market private equity firm or a small hedge fund. At the end of the day, like the devil's in the details. It depends on what kind of responsibilities you are getting at those internships, because some of these internships, like you're just getting a lot of grunt work where there's not a lot of analysis and it doesn't really give you a whole lot to talk about in your interviews, in which case that's not going to be as helpful. But if you're getting like real work, you're getting to actually like analyze a company, you're actually getting to do like, learn about like how to value a business or even just how to think about any specific deal or company from like an investor's point of view, then I think that's experience that's very valuable and can be easily talked about in an interview to make yourself stand out. So I definitely think that those are very good options. Okay. MC0495 asks, how hard is it for an Italian student to break into investment banking as a graduate with experience as a financial advisor? Yeah, I mean, so if you're already graduated and you're trying to break into investment banking, it depends on what you're currently doing. If you are currently working in a field that's somewhat related to investment banking, like it's still in the realm of finance, then typically we find that you should still be able to lateral into investment banking. But a lot of times you might have to start at a smaller bank. It might have to even be a regional boutique bank. Okay, and if you do that for say 6 to 12 months at the smaller bank, and then you can lateral up to a bigger bank later on. That's always one option. The other option, if you don't want to start a smaller bank, then you probably have to go back and get an MBA from a top business school. Okay, now that obviously takes a lot longer, and it's a lot more expensive because if you want to go to a top MBA program in the States here, it's probably going to cost you over $200,000 over 2 years. Plus, these are full-time programs, so you're also not working during those 2 years. So there's opportunity cost of you not making money during that time, right? So depending on how much money you were making in your job prior to the MBA, if you're making 100K a year, then the opportunity cost is probably 400K over 2 years or something. So usually I don't recommend the MBA unless it's like an absolute last resort. But if that's what you want to do, then that's certainly another option as well. Like these things just all come with their own pros and cons. Okay. All right. So let me go through the rest of the questions here. I think those are the ones that were submitted ahead of time. Um, Rishab Dakani asks, "Can you help with sales and trading too?" Yeah, we do have students that have gotten into sales and trading in our program as well. Our focus is primarily on investment banking, but I do think that um, a lot of the preparation largely overlaps. Like how to prepare your resume in a way that stands out. Like that's kind of the same no matter whether you're applying for banking or trading, right? How to network with these professionals that are already working there, how to get referrals. That's kind of the same thing no matter whether you're applying for banking or trading. Your behavioral answers are going to be probably very similar regardless of whether you're applying for banking and trading. Um, Obviously you're going to make slight adjustments if you're applying for trading instead of banking, but for the most part the frameworks are the same. The biggest difference is going to come in the technical side of things. Like, so the technical prep, I think there's some overlap, but obviously like with trading, there's going to be more kind of like market-based questions and probably less, like you're probably not going to get questions about merger models and leverage buyouts and things like that. So if you want to do sales and trading, we can still help you. We will probably customize our program a little bit, so that you only focus on the areas that make sense for you. And then you're also probably going to have to do a little bit of extra work on your own outside of the program. Okay, so that's kind of how I think about that. John Cook asks, "What should I be doing this summer as a freshman?" I mean, as a freshman, you definitely want to try to get a summer internship that's highly relevant to investment banking, because based on how early the current recruiting timeline is now, like your junior summer internship applications are going to open up about halfway through your sophomore year. That means that your freshman summer is really going to be the only summer you have before you have to apply for your junior summer internship, right? So your freshman summer essentially is going to be your best opportunity to actually go out and do a full-time internship that's highly relevant and get as much experience as you can, so that you can add that to your resume and beef that up. And then also, more importantly, so that you have something to talk about during your interviews as far as projects you've worked on or deals that you've worked on that have given you just highly relevant skills, right? And so um, do not waste your freshman summer. Okay. Now I think that in terms of the types of internships that you should be looking for, obviously the best internship you could possibly get would be, say, I mean, if you're a diversity candidate, then you could probably join like a diversity program for one of the bigger banks. A lot of them, pretty much most, if not all of the big banks, have diversity programs for freshmen and sophomores now. More so for sophomores and freshmen, but a lot of them do still have it for freshmen. If you're not a diversity candidate, then I would say like the best thing you can do is probably get a investment banking internship at like a regional boutique bank, right? That's an option. If you can't get something like that, I would say the next most relevant thing would be a private equity firm, right? If you can't get into a private equity firm, other relevant things you could be doing are like, I mean, anything that where you're working on like transactions, or where you're having to like value companies, right? So like by transactions, I mean like M&A deals or capital raises. Like that's why I said investment banking and private equity. Like those are transactional finance roles, which are going to be probably the most relevant. But barring that, like if you don't get some corporate development, which would be doing M&A but doing it in house, that would be also very relevant as well, right? Because you're just doing M&A, but you're on the client side as opposed to being on the advisor side, which is what bankers are, right? But otherwise, like, roles where you have to value businesses would include like equity research, where, you're writing reports to opine on the stock price of, a public company. Valuation internships, obviously you're valuing businesses, right? Because it's valuation. What else? Any type of investing role, like if it's small hedge fund or even family office or anything like that, where you're having to, pick investments, right? And usually picking investments requires you to value that investment, right? To see if it's undervalued or overvalued. So that can be very relevant. So those are like some of the probably the most relevant fields that I would consider if you're looking for an internship. Okay. So hopefully that makes sense. All right, let's come over to Instagram because I know that there's been a bunch of questions that have been coming in on Instagram. So thank you guys for waiting. Um, First question, Perdrog Fitzgerald. Sorry if I'm butchering your name. Got a question for you. I'm a freshman with a 3.7, could get a 3.79 with a grade correct form. What internship should I look for? Oh, well, ironically, I just answered that for John. So hopefully you caught that. Let's go to the next question. Bradley Knight asks, hello, I'm currently a freshman. I'm a part of ALPFA, SEO, and Project Destin. Trying to get into private equity. Awesome, man. Bradley, it's good to meet you. Those are all great organizations. And I believe those are all organizations that help diversity candidates break into banking. So it's great that you're getting help from them. I know a lot of people have had, a lot of success with those orgs. A lot of the students that we've worked with in Wall Street Mastermind have also been a part of those orgs. And so, what they offer and what we offer actually complement each other pretty well. So that's great to hear. Best pieces of advice. Yeah, I mean, you're probably going to have to be a bit more specific with your question. But in terms of like best pieces of advice for getting into private equity, the thing you have to understand about private equity recruiting is that if you're talking about like the top tier private equity firms, most top tier private equity firms will only want to hire people that already have investment banking experience. And so, not that it's impossible, but it's usually pretty difficult and pretty rare for someone to go straight from having no experience to getting into private equity. So, like a lot of people that go into investment banking actually are doing so with the intention of moving into private equity down the road. And they're viewing investment banking not as like the end goal, but as more of a stepping stone. That's just something that they have to do before they can ultimately go for private equity. So that's something to keep in mind. And so, like, that's starting to change a little bit now. Like a lot of these firms, they're starting to hire directly out of undergrad. Some of them are starting to hire junior summer interns as well, just like the banks have been doing for many, many years. Right. And so, like the Blackstones, KKRs, like a lot of the mega funds, especially, they now also have a summer analyst program for junior summer interns. And so, like, you can certainly try to aim for those. The only thing is, like, those are even more selective and even harder to get than an internship at a top tier investment bank. Like, I'm talking like bulge bracket and elite boutique banks. And so, like, if you want to aim for those, like we have someone in Wall Street Mastermind that got into KKR for their junior summer internship for summer 2023, right? I think he was one of 6 people in the entire country that got hired, right? And then we have someone else in our program that got into Blackstone's private equity group for summer 2023. And similarly, he was one of 5 people that got hired in the entire country. So when I say like there's very few spots and it's very competitive, like that's the degree of difficulty that we're talking about, right? And so like I also know a lot of people in Wall Street Management that interview for those jobs and then like end up not getting it, even though they're highly qualified candidates, right? So like there's actually no shame in that because I know those are very good candidates, but just like at that level, it's not even about like whether you're qualified or not. Like everybody's qualified, right? So it's like around. It comes down to like the smallest margins when it comes to like the difference between candidate 1 and candidate 2. Now, with that said, like if you're aiming to do that straight out of undergrad, then you have to really, really like be ahead of the curve, be ahead of your competition in terms of like building up your resume. Like your freshman and your sophomore year, you need to stack as many relevant internships as possible, right? Like ideally you're doing at least one internship every single semester while you're in school, plus also doing the summer. And so like by the time these applications open up, halfway through sophomore year, the most competitive candidates that we see nowadays probably have like 3 relevant internships on their resume. Probably at least 2, but more likely 3. Right? I've even seen some people have 4, although that's pretty rare, right? And so like that's kind of what you're having to do if you want to get to that level right now. And then like, at least one of those internships should be like, a very legitimate internship, ideally in something like investment banking or maybe like in private equity, something like that. Right. Now, like for the vast majority of people, like you're not going to go straight to the buy side, right? I would say probably only about like 10 to 11% of the students that we work with are able to pull that off, are able to go directly into the buy side without having to do banking at all, right? So for the vast majority of you, you're probably going to still have to go through banking. And so if you have to go through banking, then that's okay too. There's nothing wrong with that. Like banking is a great way to start your career, and you're going to learn a ton in your 2 years in banking. But just keep in mind, like even if you go through banking first, if you want to then recruit for private equity after banking, that process also starts very early. That process starts pretty much like at the very beginning, as soon as you start your first year in banking. So like usually around like August or September, a lot of these big funds, big private equity firms, they're already starting to recruit like 2 years in advance, right? So that's something to keep in mind. All right. So and that timeline like has continued to accelerate over the years. Who knows? Like if you're a freshman right now, who knows what that timeline will look like? 3 or 4 years from now by the time you're graduated. But that's something that catches a lot of people by surprise a lot. So I just thought that I will let you know. Let me go to the next question. Nick Arcadi says, should we go into recruiting with a specific group in mind we want to obtain a role with? Yeah, Nick, it depends, right? Like if you're going for New York, then the New York location for most investment banks is a generalist recruiting process, which means they have every single group out there in New York. So when you recruit, you're recruiting in as a generalist. And then once you get the offer, they will then put you through like a group placement process where they then match you up. They're going to take your preferences, like probably like you're going to rank your top 3 groups. And then they're going to also talk to the groups and rank their preferences. And there's also like an opportunity for you to go around and meet with different people in a lot of different groups before you have to make that decision. And so it's almost kind of like a speed dating type of format. And then HR is going to just do their best to match up as many people as possible with the groups that they want. Now, obviously, not everyone's going to get their top choice, but they do try their best to make everyone happy, right? So that's like New York, right? Now, if you're recruiting for one of the other regional offices or like Bay Area or Houston or Chicago or LA or, one of the regional offices, which are usually still located in like a major financial center, but not in New York, then typically the regional offices will have a specific industry focus. So for example, if you recruit for Bay Area or San Francisco, most of the groups out there are going to be doing technology investment banking, or maybe a little bit of healthcare investment banking, because that's what Silicon Valley is, right? If you recruit for LA, it's going to be mostly like media, because Hollywood's down there, gaming and lodging, real estate, gaming and lodging, because like casinos and stuff in Vegas, like Wynn, like those are still public companies. So that's like LA, right? Houston is primarily going to be oil and gas, because that's where all the energy companies are. And then Chicago, usually you're going to get a lot of industrials, and some like Midwest regional coverage as well. But like those are just some examples, right? So like, if you do apply for the regional offices, like make sure you know like, hey, this is the industry that this location covers. And then you're probably going to, oftentimes get some interview questions that are specific to the industry that they cover. So you want to make sure that you study up on that industry. And you want to make sure that, you know what's going on. What are the major trends? What are some deals that have been happening in that space? You want to probably have a couple of stock pitches prepared for companies in that space. Just like demonstrate that you have a genuine interest in the space that they cover. And that's going to give you a leg up on the competition. Okay. All right. Let's keep going. Leah Kissick says, I'm a graduating senior. My degree will be in financial planning. How can I position a financial planning degree in investment banking? Yeah, I'm not sure what a financial planning degree consists of, but I will say this, like, to be honest, it doesn't really matter what you major in. Like, we have a lot of students that, don't major in anything that's even remotely related to finance, and they're still getting into investment banking. Right? Like, I'm talking bioengineering majors, pre-med, legal studies, English. Like, some people are studying like, some very liberal artsy majors, and it doesn't really matter, right? So it's not about what you study in school, but it's more so about like, like if you're a graduating senior, like, I don't know, it's more, what's more important is like the rest of your resume. Like, what else do you have on your resume? Like, what other experiences do you have? Do you have any relevant work experience? Do you have any relevant student organizations that you're a part of while you've been in school? Right? Those things are probably going to be more important. Not probably, they're definitely more important then what major you study specifically, right? And so if you don't have those things, then that's probably like one of the first things that we have to fix in terms of like going out and getting you some relevant experiences. And if you're a graduating senior, that means that you're probably only about 3 to 4 months out from graduating. That means you don't have a lot of time. And so you would definitely need to start that process right away. And you would definitely need to, it's going to be rushed, right? I mean, it can't be done. Like we have seniors that have come, worked with us and have gotten offers right before they graduated or something shortly after they graduated. But ideally, you want to try to land something before you graduate, because once you graduate, it becomes much harder to land an offer, because most firms are recruiting people while they're still in school, right? So ideally, you're able to do that. And then like once you graduate, you can still get a job, but like the longer you've been graduated, the more questions people are going to have about, hey, why hasn't this person gotten a job yet? Why doesn't he have an offer yet? There's something wrong with him. There's like no one else willing to hire him. And so like you're going to have to start answering questions like that, which obviously makes the chances of you getting hired go down, right? So time is of the essence, man. I would, make sure you have a sense of urgency. You probably do already. If you need help, then, definitely reach out to us, let us know, and we'll see if we can help you, or at a minimum, give you some more detailed advice about your specific situation. Okay. Let's see. Let's go next. Noah Brooks says, as a current junior. No, I don't know if you had a question before that. So, but if you do, it might have gotten cut off. So feel free to drop your question down below again, and I'll come back and answer that. Okay. MC0495, Italian graduate with previous experience as financial advisor in private banking, also participating in CFA. Quit my job since I want to break into IB. Yeah, I think I answered your question earlier at the very beginning. You were actually the first question I answered, or maybe the second question I answered. So I'm not sure when you joined, but yeah, like as someone who's already graduated, I guess first things first, like I'm curious why you quit your job. I typically recommend that people stay in their job until they have the offer, and then they can quit their job, right? Because it's usually easier to recruit from a position of strength if you're still in your current job, versus if you already quit your job, then there's going to be a gap on your resume. And then also people are wondering like, well, why did this guy quit? Right. But if you've already quit, there's also a difference between like if you quit versus you got fired. But if you, assuming you quit and you didn't get fired, I would say to break into IB, again, you're either going to have to start at a smaller bank, like a regional bank, regional boutique, and then lateral your way up after 6 to 12 months, or you might have to go back and get an MBA. Okay. But also, if you're in Italy, I think things are a little bit different there. Like in Europe, in addition to MBA, you might also be able to go back and just get a master's in finance instead. And so a lot of people do that as well. So, that's another option too. Okay. Let me keep going. Mateo Mendoza, do you recommend Wall Street Prep? Yeah, I think Wall Street Prep is one of the more well-known financial modeling companies out there, right? So like if what you're looking for is to learn how to build financial models, I think Wall Street Prep is a good option, right? I think the other popular options are Breaking into Wall Street, as well as I want to say Wall Street Oasis, right? But those are I would say probably Breaking into Wall Street and Wall Street Prep are maybe I think their courses might be slightly better, but again, don't quote me on that, right? Like those three are have all been around for a very long time. They all have a very robust financial modeling course offering. So I would just choose from one of the three. Their pricing is pretty similar. I will say though, like it depends on like what you're trying to do. Like for a lot of you, like especially if you're like underclassmen, you're freshman, sophomore, or even junior, seniors that are trying to recruit for either a summer internship or a full-time offer, especially if you're trying to recruit for a junior summer internship, you do not need financial modeling to get an offer. Like a lot of people have been misled to believe that like financial modeling skills is the most important skill to learn if you want to pass interviews. In reality, like if you look at the top 50 banks out there, I'm talking all the bulge bracket, all the elite boutique, and even all the middle market, like all the reputable middle market banks, none of them actually ask you financial modeling questions, or like none of them give you financial modeling tests during your interview process. Okay. So like that's not That's just not a skill that you need to get the job. That's a skill that you need to do the job. Like once you have the offer and you're like trying to prep for the job itself, or you want to make sure you're going to be a good intern, or you want to make sure you're a good full-time analyst, like sure, go learn financial modeling. But like most of the time when people try to learn financial modeling before they've even gotten an offer, I have not seen that work out super well, because the skill that you need to actually pass the interviews is you need to learn how to like verbally explain these financial concepts in a very easy to understand manner, like a concise and easy to understand manner, to the person that's sitting across the table from you, namely your interviewer. Right. And so like that's a very different skill set than like knowing how to like navigate your way through an Excel spreadsheet and know how to like link up the right cells, know like what Excel function to use, know what the, shortcuts are in the Excel hotkeys. Like none of that stuff comes up in an interview. Right. And like even if you are like the best financial modeler in the world, like how to like, build these crazy spreadsheets, like that doesn't mean that you know how to verbally explain these concepts in a concise manner. Like I always tell people, like the best test for whether you're ready for a technical interview or not is, can you teach these concepts to someone else who knows nothing about finance? Can you teach these concepts to a beginner? Can you teach these concepts to your parents who don't work in finance? Or can you teach these concepts to your younger siblings who, know nothing about finance, right? Like basically in layman terms, right? Because that's the actual skill that you need to get the job. And so like when we train the students in Wall Street Mastermind on their technical interviews, like we don't do any financial modeling exercises, because that's premature and that's putting the cart before the horse. And it's very time consuming. Like most financial modeling courses out there are like 100+ hours, right? And so like imagine investing that time on a financial modeling course that you're not going to use at all during your interview process. Or you can redirect that time into learning the actual technical concepts and learning how to explain these concepts to someone who doesn't know anything about finance. Like that's the skill that you really should be developing, right? So just like, again, I don't know your profile, Mateo, but I always want to kind of give that caveat, because I feel like a lot of people out there have been kind of misguided or misled into thinking like, oh yeah, I just need to take a financial modeling course. Like obviously all the companies that are selling these courses are going to tell you, oh yeah, this is all you need. Hey, if you take this financial modeling course, you're going to get this job. Like I can't tell you how many people I've met that have invested in a financial modeling course and like couldn't even pass a basic technical interview, right? Because they've just been practicing the wrong things. Okay. So I will wait until after you've got an offer and then take one of those financial modeling courses. I'm not telling you to not take them. I think it's great. There is a place for it, but you got to do it at the right time. Okay. Lesser is greater 5 says, is it too late to start now? Lesser is greater. It depends on what you're referring to. Like too late to start now for what? Is it too late to start now for summer 2024 internships? If that's the case, no, it's not. I would say we're like, at the earlier innings of that process, but like things do tend to move very quickly. So it's definitely not early, but wouldn't say it's too late, right? If you're talking about like summer 2023, yeah, it's getting pretty late, right? But also like whether it's too late depends on kind of like where you're currently at, right? Like what shape is your resume in? How much relevant experience do you have? What school do you go to? What is your GPA? How much networking have you done? How well versed are you in all the technical concepts? Do you know how to answer the behavioral questions? Like there's a lot of different factors. So without knowing more about you, it's going to be hard for me to say like whether you still have enough time or not. But if you want to tell me a bit more about you, I'm happy to go into more detail. Or like I said, for those of you that just want like more personalized feedback, because like obviously I know on this Q&A call, sometimes it's hard to give really, really personalized feedback because I'm not actually talking to you. I'm talking at you, right? So I don't know enough information about you to give you that personalized feedback. So that's where you can, again, go book a free virtual coffee chat with one of the successful alumni from our program who has already gone through the recruiting process and has gotten an offer. You just hop on a quick call, 20, 30 minutes with the upperclassman, and you can ask them whatever questions you want about your specific situation, right? And because they've already gone through it recently, they know exactly how the process works. They can tell you, they can talk to you about their own experience and give you advice, but also give you feedback on kind of where you're at and what you still need to do going forward. Okay, so that call is completely free. It's on the house. So, if you want to do that, go to www.wallstreetmastermind.com/apply. Okay, Street is abbreviated to ST. So it's wallstmastermind.com/apply. Okay. Let's keep going. Modern with luxury. I'll be interning at SMBC this summer in the corporate investment banking industry coverage group. How can I use it to pivot to a full-time IB role given the economy? I assume by corporate investment banking industry coverage group, like, are you saying that's corporate banking or are you saying that's investment banking? Because I assume that's not investment banking, because if that was investment banking, then you wouldn't be talking about pivoting. So I'm going to assume that you're going to be in their corporate banking group, right? So if you're going to be in their corporate banking group for the summer, then what's going to have to happen is um, you're going to have to recruit again at the end of your summer for a full-time offer. So usually like the junior summer internship will be from, June to August of your junior summer. And then in August, the firms will then give return offers to the interns that they liked, right? The interns that did a good job during the internship will get a return offer at the end of the internship. And then they'll be given a very short amount of time to decide if they want to take the offer or not. And then whatever offers don't get taken by returning interns, if they still need to fill those positions, then these firms will go out and do one more round of recruiting for full time. So that's what we call full time recruiting. So that usually happen over like August and September, maybe a little bit into October, right? And so that's going to be a crucial period for you. Like as you're going back to senior year and you're kind of like starting senior year up, you're going to basically have to go through the recruiting process again. Okay. Now, given the economy, because that's the other part of your question, that is definitely like a factor, right? So for example, like the current seniors who are graduating in the class of 2023, when they had to recruit back in like August, September, and October of 2022, it was a very tough market because the stock market had been dropping for like the last 6 months and deal flow had dried up and most banks felt like they had overhired. And so there weren't that many full-time positions that people were looking for, right? So that is definitely one of the factors that could affect how many jobs there will be. But no matter what, like even in the worst years, there will always still be some full-time recruiting that happens. Like I graduated in 2008. So I did my summer internship in 2007. That was the summer that Bear Stearns 2 hedge funds collapsed. I happened to work at Bear Stearns, so I didn't have a return offer to go back to. And I had to recruit for full-time going into senior year. And that was one of the worst job markets. The economy was way worse than it is now. And even then, there were still jobs available. There's just a lot less jobs, but there are still jobs available, right? And so that's how I ended up starting at Deutsche Bank. So you're going to have to go through, long story short, you're going to have to go through the full-time recruiting process. We have also helped students in our program who came to us because they weren't able to get into investment banking for their junior summer, and maybe they only got into something like corporate banking. And so they come to us as a junior and ask us to help them prep for the full-time recruiting process. So they spend the rest of their junior year prepping for the full-time recruiting process. And then once they're done with their junior summer internship, then they're ready to go. And then they go out and get a full-time offer in investment banking, right? So if that's something that you're interested in, feel free to reach out to us and we can discuss if that's something that we could potentially help you with as well. Okay. What are your thoughts on Rutgers Business School transferring in this fall? So Rutgers is, I would say, a non-target school, but it is located in New York, right? Or close to New York. It's in New Jersey, so close enough. And so there's there are still definitely students from Rutgers that end up getting into investment banking, right? So it's not like a total non-target school where like you can barely find anyone who's going to banking. Like I think there's still a decent amount of students from Rutgers that want to go into investment banking. We've also worked with some students from Rutgers, and Rutgers also has like I know a couple of investment banking programs on campus. Like I think one's called like Little Investment Bankers of Rutgers, is LIBOR, right? And the other one's like Road to Wall Street. The two orgs also might be like somewhat related to each other. I'm not sure. So anyway, long story short, I think it's definitely a school that you can get into banking from, but it's like not like a target school or even a semi-target school. Like it's not like going to be like the most favorable place to recruit from or the most advantageous school that you could be at, right? The other thing also is like you're saying you're transferring in the fall. So a lot of times, I don't know, like if you're transferring in as a junior, if you're transferring in as a sophomore, a lot of times when people transfer, they're transferring in as a junior. So if you're transferring in as a junior, then usually that's pretty late in the recruiting process, right? Because like I said, like if you're graduating in 2025, but you're not transferring in until the fall of 2023, then like the summer 2024 recruiting process is already ongoing right now as we speak, right? by the fall, we expect most, if not all, of the elite boutiques and the bulge bracket banks to be done with their recruiting process for summer 2024, right? So, like at that point, if you try to recruit from Rutgers, best case scenarios, you end up at one of the middle market banks that are still recruiting. Or if it takes even longer than that, you might have to look at regional boutique banks. And so, like, you might be starting your junior summer internship at a slightly smaller bank, in which case you might have to recruit again after your full-time or after your summer internship for a full-time offer, which will be similar to what I just said for the last question for modern with luxury, right? So so that's something to keep in mind, right? But otherwise, yeah, like I think Rutgers is, it's solid, right? Okay, let's go to the next question. Let me get a water break real quick. Is that okay to be doing an internship in the summer 2024 after you graduate? Okay, so I assume what you're asking is you're graduating class of 2024 and you're asking, can you do a summer internship after you graduated? And typically you can't, because like for the summer 2024 internships, if you look at the job postings, a lot of them will say like you have to be graduating class of 2025. Class of 2025 meaning like, you either graduating December 2024 or May of 2025, right? And so if you're graduating class of 2024, really what you need to try to get is a summer 2023 internship, which is going to start in about 3 to 4 months here. Okay, so if you don't have that yet, that's what you should be actively working on right now if you're graduating in class of 2024. Most firms do not have, at least in the States, I think in the UK it's different. They do have some like postgraduate internship opportunities, but in the States, firms don't do internships after you've already graduated. The internships are for people that are between their junior and senior year, and they're looking to convert those people into their full-time pipeline for 1 year down the road. Okay. All right, let's keep going. Lester's Greater 5 asked, do you need to know modeling for the interviews? I already answered this question earlier when I was talking about Wall Street Prep and the financial modeling courses. So I'm going to skip that. Do you think having the SIE and Series 63 on your resume is an eye catcher? No, I don't. I mean, like, look, I think it's a slight positive. Like, if you've already done it, sure, great, right? But like those things take a good amount of time to do. And so like when it comes to like, hey, what are the things I should be spending my time on to max my chances of breaking into investment banking? Like, there's an opportunity cost because you only have so much time, right? You only have 24 hours in a day, 168 hours in a week. What are you going to choose to spend that on, right? You got to keep your grades up in school. You got to get relevant experience from your resume, internships. You got to get extracurricular activities, leadership positions on campus. You got to, study for your technicals, study for your behaviorals. You got to, network with bankers. Like I just listed like 6 things that all take a ton of time. And that's before we factor in like, having a social life and, whatever, right? Like being a college student. Like, so you could go and spend time on the SIE and the Series 63, but that's not going to be as big of a needle mover than any of these other 6 things that I just talked about, right? So, like, I just don't really think that's worth doing. Like, those are things that are going to make you do after you get the job anyway. So, for the students that we're working with, we don't ever have them spend time working on that kind of stuff. Okay. MC0495, if the job description requires IB experience and I don't have any, should I still give it a try? You can, right? I mean, like, look, there's nothing to lose by trying aside from like the little bit of time that you're going to spend to submit the application. However, like I think if all you're doing is applying, chances are going to be pretty low anyway. Like usually, in addition to applying, you're also going to have to, network, right? You also have to network with these firms. Like, by the way, like a lot of job postings, they will like list their ideal requirements, but those are not like the minimum requirements, right? Like usually, more often than not, if there's like all these different job requirements they list, and like, hey, we want our candidates to have these things, it's very rare that they're going to have a candidate that checks every single one of those boxes, right? So I would say like this is not just for investment banking, but just like a recruiting tip in general. Like, don't disqualify yourself from applying for an opportunity just because you don't feel like you check every single one of the boxes, right? With that said, like it is going to be harder, Like if sometimes they say they want IB experience and they're serious about that because they want someone who can come in and hit the ground running. They don't want someone that have to spend a lot of time training, right? And so like if you don't have IB experience and you're trying to go for a job like that, one, you're gonna have to network with them, and two, when you're networking with them, you're gonna have to figure out a way to tell your story and also to answer questions so that you can kind of address the elephant in the room, which is like you want to demonstrate that you're capable of coming in and hitting the ground running. You want to demonstrate that you're capable of coming in and actually like doing the work without them having to do a lot of hand holding, right? So just depend on how you approach it, right? It can definitely be done, but yeah, there's no doubt it's going to be a little bit tougher, right? All right, so Noah Brooks asks, how can I leverage a junior fixed income investment internship with past experience as a financial analyst at a social fintech, a growth equity immersion program, and Dartmouth Tuck Business Bridge? Well, like, so when you say like, how can I leverage? I mean, like, all these sound like great experiences, first of all, right? And some of them they all seem, somewhat relevant to varying degrees. I would say if you have these things, like, obviously, I would have them all laid out on your resume and make sure that, it's well formatted, make sure that your bullet points are well written. I see from your profile picture, it seems like you also played lacrosse. So if you're like a, college athlete, definitely you want that on your resume as well. But like in terms of how you leverage it, like, I don't know, right? I mean, like, I'm not really sure what you're asking. Just like, you want to present it in the best way possible on your resume. Certainly seems like good enough resume, good enough experience for you to be able to get at least some interviews as long as you're networking the right way, right? Like this is not a resume that I would look at and say, I don't know why this guy's applying, or I don't think this guy's qualified at all. Like you probably do have some relevant experiences and skill set, and so like you would be a candidate of interest. But networking is going to be really, really important, right? So I don't know if that answered your question, but if it didn't, maybe you can ask a follow-up question. Okay. Let me go to the next one. Nihon Park asks, do we require to have programming knowledge in field of investment banking? No, you don't need programming language at all at least as an investment banker. There are different divisions within investment banking that do use programming language. In fact, some roles in sales and trading actually do value programming skills. But like if you're talking about investment banking, as in like helping people, companies raise capital or advising companies on M&A, you definitely don't need programming language for that. Okay. Let me go to the next question. I'm currently a sophomore looking to break into banking. I'm actively networking, building skills, and looking for internships. What is the most crucial step for me currently as a sophomore? Well, it's a good question, Ryan, but I think it really depends on the person, right? So again, I don't know enough about you, but like it depends on what I always tell our students this. Like you're going to go as far as your weakest link allows you to go. What I mean by the weakest link is like there are, again, multiple boxes that you have to check in order to be a great investment banking candidate, right? Bankers are looking at the school you go to, although you can certainly get in from non-target school as well. It's just a little bit harder, right? But school you go to, your GPA, how much relevant work experience do you have? How much leadership experience do you have on campus? And also, like, are they in relevant student orgs or are they in like totally random organizations, right? How good are you at networking? How good are you at answering behavioral questions? And how good are you at answering technical questions, right? So there's like 6 or 7 things. And I would say like none of those things, I mean, aside from like your school and GPA, like you don't have to go to a certain school or you don't have to have a certain GPA for you to be able to get in. But like all the other things in terms of like relevant experience, leadership experience, relevant internships, leadership experience, GPA still has to be respectable, right? Like the higher the better. Definitely no lower than 3.0. Ideally higher than 3.5, like, but definitely no lower than 3.0. But like your resume, your networking, your behaviorals, your technicals, like none of those things are optional. Like they're not nice to haves. They're all mandatory. As in like, if you don't know how to do well in one of those 4 areas, you're either not going to get the interview because your resume wasn't good enough, or you didn't network well enough and you didn't get people to refer you, or you might get interviews, but you're not going to be able to pass the interviews because you don't know how to answer behavioral questions, or you don't know how to answer technical questions, right? So if so, like depending on what your weakest link is out of all those areas, like if you're like, hey, I have no relevant experience on my resume right now, then that's probably the thing that we need to go and shore up first, right? But if you're like, no, I have enough relevant experience, but I haven't done any networking yet, well, then you probably need to go out and start networking, right? If you've been doing both of those things, you have a good resume, you've been networking, then like chances are, if you're doing those things well, you're most likely going to get interviews. In which case, we need to make sure you're prepared for the interview. So, like again, this is very case by case, and everybody's different. It's not just like, hey, if you're a sophomore, do this. Like you need to do all of the above. Okay, and then so like again, I don't know what you've done or not done already. If you want more personalized feedback, again, I would encourage you to just go and book a free virtual coffee chat with one of our successful upperclassmen alums. Again, you can go to www.wallstreetmastermind.com/apply. Okay. Streets abbreviated to ST. wallstmastermind.com/apply. Let me go to the next question. Any insights to Canadian recruitment? Yeah, I mean, with Canadian recruitment, I mean, look, in terms of what you need to do, it's not that different, right? Like it's everything I just said. Like what you need to recruit in the US is the same as what you need to recruit in Canada. Now, the only difference is that in Canada, there are a lot fewer banks and there are a lot fewer jobs. Like those offices are much smaller and they hire a lot fewer people, right? And so, but there's also less people applying. Don't get me wrong. Like there's way more people in the United States trying to break into investment banking than people in Canada. So I'm not saying that it's harder in Canada, right? But I do think that like, there like there are a lot of offices out there that might only hire like one or two people sometimes, right? So in a way, like that can make things harder, right? So that's just something to keep in mind. But like from a preparation standpoint, like I don't really have anything different or unique to say about Canada because you need to be doing all the same stuff that all of your friends in the US are doing. Okay. Is recruiting for capital markets in terms of technical similar to IB? Yeah, I would say similar, but like not like 100% the same, right? Like if you're recruiting for capital markets, there's going to be a lot less of an emphasis or maybe no emphasis at all on things like merger models or like accretion dilution or leverage buyouts, right? Because you're not going to be working on those things, but you will still need to know your accounting. You will still need to know your valuation. There's probably going to be more like market-based questions, right? Like knowing what's going on in the market, knowing what the Fed's doing, what's going on with inflation, how is that impacting the stock markets? Or like if you're interviewing for DCM and not ECM, then knowing your bond math and knowing how debt works. Like so, it depends. But like I would say there's still a ton of overlap. Like accounting valuation, that's like the foundational things that you need to know, regardless of what you're recruiting for or what group you're recruiting for in banking. And then like there's just some slight nuances and differences that you have to account for, right? But not a whole lot, though, to be honest. Let's go to the next question. Any insight on Centerview recruiting? Yeah, sure. We've gotten several people into Centerview before. Centerview is a very interesting firm. It's considered one of the top, if not the top, elite boutique firm out there, right? And so the interesting about them is that they'll still do their diversity recruiting pretty early, like usually right around this time of the year if you're a sophomore. But like they usually don't do their non-diversity recruiting until much later. So at least in past years, they've waited until the fall semester of junior year, probably like August, September-ish, to recruit, which is way later than all the other bulge bracket and elite boutique banks. Like a lot of times, like by the time they're doing that recruiting, like they're like by far everyone's top choice out of the banks that are still recruiting because they're mostly competing against like middle market banks at that point, right? So I don't really know why they do it that way. It's kind of weird to me because they're basically letting all the other bulge bracket and elite boutique banks pick off all the best talent first. But that's just like what we've seen historically, right? Now, who knows? Like a lot of banks, like they can change their recruiting timeline anytime they want. That's why like a lot of banks, they pull their timeline up earlier and earlier every year, right? Like JP Morgan 2 years ago started on June 1st. Then like last year, they're like, we're going to start on February 1st, right? And this year they started on like December 2nd or something. And so like I'm not saying Centerview can't move it up, but like historically, they've been one of the last ones to recruit if you're not diversity. Okay. What else about Centerview? I think Centerview is unique in that like their class is really small. They don't hire a lot of people. In fact, they might have one of the smallest classes on the street. I believe they do have one of the smallest classes on the street. let's say it's like maybe no more than 10 to 15 interns a year. Okay. The other thing is they have a 3-year analyst program as opposed to a 2-year analyst program. And they're different from most other banks where, like, they want to hire people that actually want to stay in banking long term. They want to hire people that don't just view banking as like a 2 and out, like do 2 years and then move on to private equity, do 2 years and go somewhere else. Right. And so, like, a lot of people at Centerview do actually stay on and be promoted to associate and things like that. Right. And I think I've heard they have a really, really good culture. And so that does help. It makes people want to stay longer. They also pay like top of the street, right? Like they pay by far. I think they pay by far the most out of any investment bank that I know of, right? We had someone last year who got a offer from Centerview, and he was telling me the numbers, and it was like, I mean, granted, back then like the market was a lot better, so these numbers might have come down now, but like it was like I don't know, 130K base, and then like I want to say, 100, you can earn up to like 100% performance bonus, right? Which would bring you to, what is it, 260, right, in your first year. And then they also give like a $50,000 sign-on bonus. So that would put you at like 310 or something. So like, I don't remember the exact number anymore, but I just remember it was like over 300K, potentially over 300K as a first year analyst, which is like unheard of, right? Because most firms, like even if you're at a bulge bracket elite boutique bank, we usually tell people like the all-in comp, you should expect between 150 to like maybe the low 200s, which is a lot for a first-year analyst. Like this is why banking is such an attractive job. Is like the average college guy in the United States is making $55,000 a year right now, right? If you're able to start at a top-tier bank, you can make 3 to 4 times that. So imagine making three to four times more than your friends, more than your classmates that are graduating at the exact same time as you, right? And if you're making 3 to 4 times more than them in year one, how much more do you think you're going to make more than them 5 years down the road, 10 years down the road? Like, so that's why it's like even regular banking pay is already really good, but Centerview like takes it up another notch, right? And so like to break 300K is like, I remember when I heard that, I was just shocked, right? Again, that number has probably come down now, but I imagine relative to the other firms, they probably still pay more than pretty much everybody else. They still pay above street. So very, very great firm, very attractive place to work for. So like if you can get it, if you're one of the dozen people or so that get an offer from there, like that's awesome. Like great for you. I would definitely consider that over most of the other investment banks out there, if not all of them. Right. I mean, it's at that level, it's debatable. Like, do you want to go Centerview or Evercore? You want to go Centerview or Goldman Sachs? Right. Like it's like I wouldn't fault you either way, but like it's up there. Right. Could be challenging though to wait for them because like usually like a lot of candidates they'll get really, really good offers much earlier than that from other bulge bracket or other elite boutique banks. So like you might have to just take the bird in hand and you might not be able to wait around until they're done recruiting. But I think like I'm looking at the name of the person that asked this. Sounds like your name's Holly, so you're female, so you probably qualify for diversity. So you might try to get into the diversity process, which again I would expect that to be right around now. Okay. Hopefully that helps. One last thing I will say about Centerview. The people that we've worked with that have interviewed with Centerview, like their interviews can get very, very technical. And also they like to ask like some pretty weird outside the box questions, including like brain teasers and things like that, just to see how you think. And so, make sure to prepare for those. All right. Next question. We're almost out of time, but I'm going to try to finish the rest of these questions here. So, advice on keeping up with all the new summer analyst openings to apply quickly. Yeah, I mean, honestly, like, so in our program, like what we do is like we actually keep track of it for everyone. So like we'll always announce when like a new opportunity is open. We have a tracker where we list like all the opportunities that have already opened. So like if you are in a program like ours, or maybe like I'm sure there are other organizations out there that have trackers like this too. So if you can get your hands on one of those, then that would be the easiest way. Otherwise, like if you have to do it yourself, then what I would say is, a couple things you can do, right? Like, I mean, obviously you should have like a list of the top target firms, top firms that you want to track, right? And so like I would be tracking all the bulge bracket banks, all the elite boutique banks, all the middle market banks, like that are in the top 50. Like if you look up the Vault Investment Banking Prestige Guide, right? They have a ranking that they update every single year with the top 50 banks. I actually think it's a pretty good list. I think it's like their methodology is pretty sound. They survey like thousands of investment bankers that already work on Wall Street, and they ask them for their opinions. And then like that's how they tell the results. And I look at the results every year, and generally speaking, for the most part, I tend to agree with kind of ranking. Like rankings are arbitrarily are inherently subjective and somewhat arbitrary, but like for the most part, I feel like it's pretty reasonable, right? And it's like I would probably be tracking all those firms, and like the most manual way is like go on their website, go on their career page once a week, and just like check to see if like a new job has been posted for the summer, right? The other thing is like you can set up job alerts on a lot of the major job sites out there, like Google Jobs, LinkedIn, Glassdoor, even Indeed. Like a lot of these companies, when they post jobs, they also post on these major job sites. And so if you set up like a job alert with the right keywords, you'll get like daily emails or weekly emails or whatever you make the setting. You can update the setting in terms of like the frequency that you want, but you can get daily emails that are sent to you with like a list of jobs that you might be interested in, right? And then so that's like kind of like a more automated way. And then like a lot of these companies, they also have places on their website where you can enter your email and subscribe to their like recruiting email newsletter and stuff like that, right? And so like if if they have that, then I would definitely sign up for that because they'll probably send out emails announcing any opportunities like that. Although otherwise, like I would say, if you frequent places like Wall Street Oasis and things like that, like they're always going to be discussing this kind of stuff, right? So you can also just stay on top of the news flow there. But I think that like if you're like just at a minimum checking it manually once a week, like you should be fine. Okay. Let's see if there are any other questions. I think that was most of the questions. Holly says, yes, a female. How I was looking. Yeah. Okay, cool. Looking at the diversity program. Yeah, definitely like try to get into the diversity diversity path if you can, because that's going to work out a lot better for you timing wise, as long as you're ready, right? Like if you're ready to interview now, like you know your technicals, you know your behaviorals, then there's no reason to wait, right? If you're not ready, then that's a whole different story. Obviously you don't want to like make yourself look bad, and in that case, like I might wait for the regular process. Okay. Any insights on Blackstone US? Yeah, I mean, Blackstone is one of the hardest firms you could possibly try to recruit for. As far as finance jobs goes, it's even harder than getting into investment banking. They have multiple different groups. Like I said, we got someone into their summer 2023 class for their America's Private Equity Group, and I think they only hire like 5 people in the entire country, right? So it's very, very hard. We've also had people. We've had several people interview with their strategic. What's the group called? Special Situations Group, or no, Tactical Opportunities. They call it TAC Ops, right? Their Tactical Opportunities Group before, and I think that group also a very good group, but they only hire like 2 people, I think, per year in that group because it's a slightly smaller group. And so it's very, very difficult, right? Like the candidate that we had in Wall Street Mastermind that ended up interviewing for TAC Ops, the 1 year that I'm thinking about, he ended up making it to the final 3 in the interview process. But they only hired 2. So he was, first person on the wait list. But of course, the 2 people that got the job, they're not going to pass up a job at Blackstone. So like he didn't get it, right? And to be honest, he was the guy that was waitlisted, like that we worked with. He was super impressive. Like he's one of the sharpest students that we had in our program, right? So that's why I said earlier, it's like, there's no shame if you don't get one of those offers. It's like he still ended up going to PJT, which is also very hard to get an offer from, right? So he ended up just fine, and who knows, he might recruit into Blackstone down the road after he leaves PJT, right? So, but yeah, they're very hard. I think the 2 people that got hired in front of him, like one was like, I don't know, like used to be in like the Special Forces or Navy SEALs or have some crazy background like that. So that's like obviously like a super interesting, unique background. And financial services firms love stuff like that, right? And the other guy had like personal relationship with, I think, like the head of the group or something. And so like that's like a relationship hire, and it's it's hard to beat out relationship hires like that, right? So that's just like bad luck. But aside from that, I think like in terms of the interview itself, like I would say it's even probably more challenging than investment banking interviews because they don't just expect you to know like the basic technicals anymore, right? Like they're really trying to understand more like how do you think as an investor? Because that's what the job is about when you're working at Blackstone, right? And so you're gonna want to know your opinion about different companies. You're gonna like want to have like LBO candidates prepared that you can pitch. You're gonna want to like study up on like what companies they've already invested in. Like for example, they can ask you like, okay, talk to us about one of our portfolio companies that you really like, and then they can also say, well, okay, now talk to us about one of our portfolio companies that you don't think was a good investment. I mean, like that's a challenging question, right? And so you have to be like well versed enough and also do your homework and do your research um, well enough so that you can actually answer questions like that, right? And so like that's not even just like, oh, knowing how to do accounting or valuation or even LBOs. That's like taking it to the next level, which is, yeah, you understand the concepts, but now it's like application knowledge. You have to be able to apply it to like real world situations, apply it to like real companies, right? And be able to speak to those intelligently, right? And so um, that's pretty much kind of what I would say about Blackstone. Okay. And I think on that note, it looks like that was the last question that we have in the queue, and we're actually about 6 minutes over time anyway. So I do have to go, but thank you guys for tuning in. Again, for those of you that are interested in getting more personalized help with your specific situation, because again, on these Q&A calls, a lot of times I don't know anything about you guys, and so it's very, very hard for me to go too in depth or too specific in terms of giving you customized advice that would really, really move the needle for you. But like if you liked the advice that you got on here today and you want a lot more of it, I would encourage you guys to reach out to our team. Again, if you want to work with us, first step is to schedule a free virtual coffee chat with a successful upperclassman, an alum of our program who's already gone through the recruiting process recently and has successfully got an offer from the top bank. And you'll be able to talk to them for 20 to 30 minutes and ask them just whatever questions you have about the recruiting process, about your specific situation. A lot of similar questions that you're asking me today, except you're talking to a real human being, or like, anything you want to know about the program, right? After that conversation, if you still like everything you hear and if you still want to talk to us and you still want to work with us, then they can help you set up a follow-up call with our team. And at that point, that's when you would apply to work with us. And then you'll get on a call with one of my lead advisors, our director of enrollment. They'll talk to you, learn a lot more about your specific situation. They'll look at your resume. They'll talk about like, okay, based on where you're at, how much time you have left, what kind of firms you're targeting. Here are the things that you need to do. Here's how much time we have to do it. Here's how we're going to go about that. And then lay out like actually like a customized game plan for your specific situation. Okay. And Gustavo says, I don't see how to buy the course on your website. Yeah. So that's why I'm giving you the instructions now, right? You can't just buy the course from our website. Like we don't just work with everyone and anyone who wants to work with us. Like you can't just pay us and then we'll just work with you. Like you have to apply. You have to speak to our lead, our alum and our lead advisor. And then like, if we vet you and we feel like we're confident enough to actually help you get into investment banking or private equity or one of these other high paying Wall Street jobs, then and only then will we invite you in to work with us. Okay. Because we offer a money back guarantee. We can't just offer that to everybody. Right. So that's why we want to make sure it's a good fit. We want to make sure we actually feel confident we can help you. If we can't help you, we don't want to waste your time or your money. Like that's not what we're about. Right. It's a matter of integrity. We only want to work with the people that we can actually help. And so if you feel like that's something you're interested in, go and book this call. Go and book that first call. Again, you can go to www.wallstreetmastermind.com/apply. wallstmastermind.com/apply to book that virtual coffee chat. And we look forward to talking to you. Okay. And regardless of whether we actually end up working with you or not, at a minimum, we will do our best to give you some personal advice for your specific situation. Similar to the advice that I've been giving on this call, on this Q&A, but just more personalized for your actual situation. Okay. So anyway, hope this was helpful for you guys. Again, we do this about once a month. So I'll come back and do another one of these on this page at the beginning of March. So stay tuned for that. And otherwise, I thank you guys for joining, and I look forward to talking to you guys soon. All right. Gustavo says, have you helped international students? Yes, we do help international students. You just have to make sure you're coming to us early enough if you are an international student, because if you come to us too late and all the big firms that actually sponsor visas are already done recruiting, then we can't really help you. Okay. So if you're coming to us as a freshman or junior, we're going to be able to help you even if you're an international student. If you come to us as a junior or senior, then it's going to be a little bit late, right? And then we have to get into like, do you have 1 year of OPT or 3 years of OPT? And there's going to be more specific. So if you're not sure, if you have more questions, you can also message us, just DM us, like DM us on Instagram or DM us on LinkedIn, and like we'll get back to you. Okay, and we're happy to answer a lot more specific questions about your situation in the DMs. All right. Am I based in NYC? No, I'm not based in NYC. I'm actually based on the West Coast. So, all right, guys. Like I said, I got to run. Thank you guys for joining. Again, if you have more questions, feel free to DM us. Happy to talk more. Otherwise, until next time. All right. Talk to you guys soon. Bye.